And I would say that this is the piece about clarity, is knowing that where you are isn't where you're always going to be. And so what is it that you need, honestly, because the needs have to get met. And we can get into your emotional needs, your mental needs, and how can you advocate in a way that feels safe, accessible, that feels that you can have the energy to do, the nervous system, right? Like all of these pieces come together. But what are your needs in this moment? And sometimes it is staying in the place that you don't want to be in. I've done that. I mean, we do that when we need to, not when we want to. And I think those are the things like, okay, once we understand our needs, how long do I need that? This is not a forever. This is a temporary. This is a bandage, and thinking about it in that way helps to mitigate. Like, okay, countdown begins, and holding ourselves accountable. We will rip off that bandage when we cross that bridge.
Welcome to Unpacked Culture Chronicles. I'm Danielle Marshall, an equity strategist and executive coach, and I'm thrilled to have you here. This podcast is all about exploring cultural differences, similarities, and the ways that we can begin to bridge across them. Together, we're going to dive into meaningful conversations with guests from all walks of life. We'll share stories, insights, and practical strategies for navigating the complexity of culture in our workplaces, communities, and personal lives. I'm excited to welcome our guest today. Raquel and I first connected through the Feminist Podcast Collective while we were participating in the Drop the Mic Summit, which was an incredible space to just really learn from other podcasters and challenge some of the traditional ways that we think about the podcasting industry. And as I learned more about Raquel's work as a career advisor and coach, I knew I had to have her join me on the show. This feels very real for me right now with so many people across the country, especially for us that are in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, navigating furloughs, layoffs. And there's just some really big questions that are coming up about what's next. This conversation couldn't be more timely. So I am thrilled to have Raquel here. So please just join me in welcoming Raquel Sands.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to speak and create more space for this type of nuanced conversation. So.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled that you could be here. And so as I do typically on the show is I want to invite you to tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Oh man. Well, I consider myself a clarity coach. I don't put clarity career coach because I feel like career could mean many different things to many different types of people, but it's about clarity at the end of the day. I have been a job hopper my whole career. So, I've been a freelancer, consultant, employee, W-2 employee. I've been a subcontractor. I feel like I've done the spectrum. And so I feel confident in speaking, at least to some degree. And I really try to meet people where they're at. If they're in a 9 to 5, if it's in the government, if it's in nonprofit, like corporate is everywhere, regardless of the industry. And on the flip side, the solopreneurs that were just starting, like myself, we're in this beginner phase and getting out of 9 to 5, and how do we uplift ourselves? So I've been doing coaching work for about a year and a half, but I've been a communications professional for about 10 years. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that you right off the top, you're like, nope, not a career coach, but I am a clarity coach. And so, but both, words, the way we use words, they're important, right? Because they mean different things. And I'm kind of curious, just even as you say, like, it's not career, but you mentioned like career can mean so many different things. What does that word come to mean for you?
Oh, I feel like now career does mean the scope, the breadth, width, depth of all the things that any one of us can bring to the table. And that's so hard because I feel like I'm a 92 baby, so I'm already outing myself. I'm a millennial. And so when I grew up thinking about career, it's like you get a degree, and that degree, like 1 + 1 is 2. It equals a formula. So as you get the degree, it kind of sort of pigeonholes you in something, and you stay in that company or you stay in that role, and you climb that one ladder or that one field. You stick in that one industry. But I feel like with time, it's not that. I mean, as a communications person, transferring skills, I could go into public relations if I so chose. I could be a lawyer with all the writing skills. I could be into coding with all the web design skills. So I feel like career, I truly hope that people are redefining the word career, that it's such a nuanced term now. But yeah, that's what I feel like it would be for me now. Mhm.
Yeah, I really have a deep appreciation for that because even I am a Gen
Mm.
Xer, so we'll put that out there. But even for, I would say, Gen X,
Mm.
career means something different. Like when I think back to my parents' generation and certainly my grandparents' generation, like that they grew up in an era where people stayed with the company 40, 50 years. Like you waited to get the gold watch that they gave you for, being a long-standing employee. And I had this conversation at one point with a family member and they're like, "You move around too much in your career." And I was like, I can't imagine staying at one company. It's like
Yeah.
times have changed. I was like, and I would love if you would talk about this, but like one of the things that I have
Mm.
found to be true is that if you stay at a job, your um, potential for a pay increase actually decreases compared to what would happen if you switch jobs and move into whatever new role. So I don't know what you found around
Mm.
that. That was my
No,
my experience.
yeah, yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I will disclaim that the longest I've been at any place, and this is not to brag, but this is just to disclaim for people who maybe have been at places longer. The longest I've been at in any company is 2 years. But what I've seen in colleagues that have been there 5+ years is there's a limit. If that team or that department only has, let's say, X many roles for in the marketing perspective and a marketing team, then they literally have to wait. The whoever wants to get the next title or wait for promotion or whatever it is, wait for somebody to quit, get fired, laid off, or move to another department. And so even when we think about, okay, we do want that, or if some people do want to stay in that lane, what does that even look like? Options are limited if they're not on the right side of the office politics, if they don't have a good network, if they're not looking shopping within that company or industry. So I think even the 9 to 5, I mean, nothing is secure, and this is something I talk a lot about in my work. Is what does security mean? What does success mean? When we can't outsource that. There's only up to a certain extent. And so, regardless if it's a solopreneur or a 9 to 5, we always have to kind of, not always, but there's always this feeling of kind of one foot in, one foot out. Like, okay, I'm in this job and I want to be a manager, I want to be a director, whatever it is. What if that team doesn't have that opportunity for me, or they've capped the limit? And what if, like, now we're seeing government shutdown and
Yeah.
furloughs? And so I feel like the redefinition, the reframing of not allowing the external things as much as we can to define, to control, impose on us, because then we're forced to pigeonhole ourselves. So,
Mhm.
mhm.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I've definitely been I think I have a little bit longer tenure in roles, but I'm thinking like my average has been about, give or take, maybe about 5 years, in some cases a little bit longer.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think the other thing that comes up for me a lot in conversation with other folks, and myself included, is that it isn't always just about like the promotion. Sometimes you have a vast amount of interest, right? I want to learn this new thing. I want to get my hands on this different kind of project. And sometimes roles support it and other times they just don't, right?
Oof.
And so where do you go next?
That is huge, huge, huge. Because I remember when I was starting my career, I have a bachelor's in English. And here in the DC area, if it's not exactly government, it's government adjacent. So I started kind of contract work, being a technical writer. And I just didn't like doing contracts, RFPs, requests for proposals for the government. It just
Yeah.
didn't, it wasn't my cup of tea. And so that already capped my growth in that respect. But I started seeing that different companies, and I think this is where the industries might be a little different if it's a nonprofit sector versus more startup. Like I did a gig. I worked for a year at Uber as a contractor, and their whole culture was so different. they very much worked laterally. Let's You can do a stint for 3 months and you still hold your regular job, but you can do kind of projects for another team. And I really appreciated that because it allowed people to upskill and diversify without having to completely leave the organization or leave their team, and the whole mobility thing. So I just think it's so interesting when certain teams or organizations allow that sort of culture, because it takes the pressure off of the individual to see, do I need a pitch to this manager? How do I insert myself? And as a woman of color, as a woman, as all these things, it adds pressure. How do I have this conversation to a white male, whatever it is, 3 times my age, who may or may not see me or recognize me or look at the same opportunities that I'm seeing. So it's hard in that respect in a 9 to 5 of like, okay, how do I make this work for me when the cards are stacked against? And
Yeah.
yeah,
And
culture.
let's dive into that a little bit more because you mentioned in your opening that you've worked in a variety of roles like over your career. And I'm kind of wondering like what each of those roles has taught you when you think about like work and culture because you've already brought up like being a woman of color, a woman. What have you seen?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, in the early part of my career, being the only petite, I'm exactly 5 feet tall and only Latina, only woman, in a government pseudo adjacent space, white men, kind of yuppies, as my mom would call them, young upcoming professionals. And that was very intimidating. I mean, one of the work traumas, PTSDs, was in my very first interview outside of, it was first real job, not going at the library part-time, something full-time. And they asked me if I was a citizen because I have an accent. I speak Spanish. I grew up speaking Spanish at home, but I was born here. And so that immediately put me off because I was like, wow, is this going to be the experience I have in every job? And that was just my first job interview.
Yeah.
And then since then, I am happy to say that since getting out of the technical writing field and I got more into kind of editorialism, journalism a bit, and then I really found a passion with marketing because you can add so many different things if you're interested in web design or if you're interested in whatever it is, blogging, podcasts. With more variety, I got to work with people like at Uber, global company now, people in different time zones and people 2, 3 times my age. And we all have different backgrounds. And all of a sudden, I'm on a call with somebody in Mexico City. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how amazing that that person has opportunity in their own country, but making the US type money. Um, and we both met each other in this way, working in marketing. So I think with making the job hops in different industries, leaving kind of government pseudo and getting more into private sector, and then even switching from technical writing to more marketing, like I think the industry says a lot about the type of diversity in the people, but in also diversity and opportunity. Mhm.
Yeah. So, I
Yeah.
mean, that it's interesting to think about that from the lens of folks that are looking for work. Like, what is it that you are seeking, right? It's not necessarily just about the job, but what is the culture of the
Mm.
organization? What are
Yep.
the experiences we have in the
The
interview
interview.
process? Because that tells you a lot too. Like, I hate that that happened to you as I'm sitting here and hearing it, and I have my own stories, if you will, and my own past traumas that come up when I think about interviews I have sat on, and it has taught me so much,
Mm.
about who I don't wanna work for, and
Mhm.
maybe where I leverage, my own voice, and I'm gonna actually give you an example, right, because it mirrors sort of what you have said, and folks, to be very clear about this before I even go into this, that is a microaggression. We're talking about unprompted bias in that moment where you are aggressively asking a question, which happens to be illegal also. Like, that is not one of those questions that we should be asking people. Um, when I was getting ready to start my consultancy, and, so I'm an equity strategist. Before I had done that, I was thinking about working potentially for a corporate company. And so I had gone through the interview process like everybody does, and I got someone on the phone, and we're having this interview and it's over Zoom. And he asked me, he's like, "What are your qualifications?" But before he allowed me to finish like whatever thought I was going to, share with him, he says, "Because being Black isn't enough to do DEI work." And I was like, "Oh." I was like, I'm so lucky then that I have all of these other skills to accompany in that. But in that moment, if this is your HR person that's conducting the recruitment process, I don't want anything to do with your company. And I was so upset in that moment. And this was a job that was actually recommended to me by a friend. And so I called that friend and I had to say to her, I said, I just want you to understand what has happened, because I said, the next thing that I am doing is I am contacting the head of the organization to make sure that they're clear. I said, but as a courtesy to you, I'm going to give you warning that I'm about to raise my voice in this way. And thankfully, she said, do what you need to do. She said, I respect that. She was disappointed. But these are things that people encounter on a more regular basis, I think, than we actually pay attention to.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, to think that, um, none of us are equipped, even from I don't mean to put a general brushstroke on people or places, but I'm just assuming that most of us aren't brought up with these sort of muscles and skills to speak up for ourselves in these places, that already the places don't have advocacy and agency built in. And for me, like, I remember just being grateful that I had the interview in the first place, and then to go back home, and I was just trying to, move out of my house, and or move from m- living with my parents, and starting to pay off the student debt. So just being an adult, finally
Yep,
doing all the financial things. And should I push back? When do I push back? And I think that's when at least with respect to job hopping, I felt a lot of agency in that, because I felt like, okay, I can, um, maybe not in times where the government is shut down, and feel very
sure.
scarce, but when I feel willing and able, I have power to name my salary as much as I want in my next job, and I can determine um, the the terms as much as I can, and negotiate. How much insurance do you all have? Or actually, I
Yeah.
want this and that, and so yeah. So I will
Yeah.
say.
To that point, though, Raquel, because, I think in both of our stories,
Hmm.
there is a moment where something is said, done, hinted at,
Mm-hmm.
that obviously bumps up against your own edge. Okay.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so I suspect at a time where so many people are out of work,
Mm.
sadly, this is going to become prevalent again, right? Because people can pick and choose who they want to hire in that moment. But if you were speaking to a person of color, and I'm not even going to just say a person of color, any marginalized identity in this moment,
Yeah.
right? That's looking for a job.
Mm.
How do they find their voice in that moment? Because you said for yourself, like, I didn't feel like I had that initial, like, I couldn't push back in that moment.
Yeah.
So obviously that shifted for you.
Yeah.
But what would you tell them to do today, or to ask?
It's a hard thing to think about, because I think when I say what I'm going to say, things might come up that people might not want to sit with, which is, what is it that in this season of your life you need? And that's different, I feel like, than what you want, because my husband wants to be in business. My friends, are so eager to not be in their contracts, or feeling fear, but they feel like they're holding on to whatever it is for the sake of money, rent, whatever it is. And I would say that this is the piece about clarity, is knowing that where you are isn't where you're always going to be. And so what is it that you need, honestly, because the needs have to get met. And we can get into your emotional needs, your mental needs, and how can you advocate in a way that feels safe, accessible, that feels that you can have the energy to do. The nervous system, right? Like all of these pieces come together. But what are your needs in this moment? And sometimes it is staying in the place that you don't want to be in. I've done that. I mean, we
Mhm.
do that when we need to, not when we want to. And I think those are the things like, okay, once we understand our needs, how long do I need that for?
Yeah.
This is not a forever. This is a temporary. This is a bandage, and thinking about it in that way helps to mitigate. Like, okay, countdown begins, and
Yeah.
holding ourselves accountable. We will rip off that bandage when that we cross that bridge. So,
Yeah, I very much appreciate that because I think about all the transitions I've just made over the course of my life, and it is not maybe when you're in your 20s, you can walk into an office and just quit one day. But for the majority of us, as we get older, you have a spouse or a partner, you have kids, you have a mortgage or even rent. You can't make these rash decisions in the same way. So
mhm,
it's like having a plan, like, do I need to have money in the bank? Do I need to have another job in place? Like, what
yes,
needs to be true to your point for
yeah,
me to do this?
yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's hard because those are the things that, at least for me, speaking for myself, I didn't want to grapple with. Like right now in October of 2025, um, I'm really grateful that I stacked myself so much in the earlier part of this year that I was able to have two contracts and pay off my car loan. And that was a big deal for me because I knew that I wanted to give space and time to my business. So if I
Mhm.
hadn't done that, which was not pleasant in that moment of time, I was really struggling, mentally, emotionally. I was stressed, but I willingly accepted that because I knew that in the long run, it was going to save me. And it really, I mean, knock on wood, but I feel pretty good. And not to say that I can control everything because I think that that's huge. I'm not advocating that we need to control every single thing, or that we even can. But it's like, as long as we have a guideline, as long as we have an awareness and we're accountable to a certain extent to that, and being able to pivot, then I think that's the
Yeah.
key. Hmm.
And maybe this again is why you're our clarity coach, right? So what needs to be true in order for us to move to this next level, whatever that level is, because it's going to be different for each person that we're talking to.
Yeah.
Um, I kind of want to pivot back for a second to this idea of culture and careers, work opportunities. And so I'm wondering in the work that you've done supporting people,
Mm.
how do you think their cultural backgrounds influence like the way that they approach careers or work opportunities?
Oof. Well, I will say, the people I've worked paid and unpaid, because I feel like that's something that I want to continue. And pay and unpaid could be the podcast I have, the newsletter. But I do try to do some work because, in that way, kind of pro bono, whatever it is, because I not everybody can at all times, um afford. And I feel like it's important, at least for me at the stage where I'm at, to also learn. I'm learning as I'm going, and I feel like it's a win-win. So I will just say that the people that have taken more up me up on the kind of free, unpaid, are people who are like me, people of color. I don't know what the statistic of, or the context of why. I feel like there's something around. Like I have a friend of mine, she picks my brain all the time, and I have to be like, you know that I'm a coach, and I'm gonna be charging you now on. And I say that because I don't think that I mean, I wasn't brought up that I'm gonna invest in a money coach, or I'm gonna invest in a career coach. It's like you endure, you suck it up, you do the next thing, and you rinse and repeat. And the clients that I have had that pay me are not people of color. They're of different gender identities. And that's something very important to me too, is not necessarily demographics. It's more of the, do we resonate with the psychographic that you want to have autonomy in your path. Um, and I don't know necessarily how they were taught about investing in themselves and positioning themselves in their career. But I will say that they seem of the ones that I've worked with, they were very clear. Like they know they want to be in a 9 to 5 space and they want to make it work for them. And the other two really knew that they wanted to be in business, and we got to set that up, their website and everything for them. But I wonder, um as a Latina, I see a lot of Instagrammers or people talking about in the Latin space, um healing our trauma with money, or healing our what does it mean to have a career, or uh, our parents came here with nothing. Should we feel entitled? Should we feel like we can? And I feel like that is, at least for myself, that's some work that
Yeah.
I've done on myself, to even call myself a clarity coach and want to take up the space to help others. So I feel like there is some imposter syndrome, or there's healing, in my community for sure. There's, I don't know, this kind of, do I invest now? Like cart before the horse. Do I invest now and then do that? Or do I need to do that? I don't know. It's really interesting. I don't know the other communities. I don't feel comfortable speaking to what.
I get it, and Raquel, I'm gonna tell you right now, you're activating my coach brain as I
Oh
hear
gosh.
you saying this. So, because this is going out to our audience, like, I appreciate what you said, that you have received
Mm,
money from
mhm,
certain communities, but maybe not others so far.
mm,
What I am telling my listeners right now is, for any individual, like, we pay for their services. There is literally nothing that we get for free in this world.
that's right.
And so I think the first thing that I'm looking at is, it is not my concern how much money you have in your pocket,
Mm,
right? Like, my job is to provide the best service that I possibly can, because under every other circumstance,
yeah,
someone's willing to pay for it.
that's right.
Right? And so I think we have to value ourselves enough to be able to say, I'm going to stand in my truth in this moment. I'm going to stand in this service, because at the end of the day, like, I've talked to you already. I know the strength of, like, this clarity that you're able to help people get through
Yeah,
or get to. And so for that reason, I'm like, well, by all means, if you're going to help me make a shift in my own life, then you deserve to be paid.
yeah. Thank
Right?
you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah. And I will say this has been a journey, because, and I have a whole series of talking about how I've been juggling the 9 to 5, and the business has been the side hustle, this thing. And so now, what does it look like? I mean, as my own guinea pig, what does it look
Yeah.
like for me to step into that space? So I appreciate that, because
And
it's
you're gonna have a powerful testimony when you're done, because this is the hard part, right? Like, I came from a 9 to 5 also. Like, we have to make the journey at some point. If you're moving into entrepreneurship, it doesn't look the same for everyone, and there are going to be hard lessons learned for all of us along the way. But the things that you learn can serve to empower other people,
that's right. That's
right?
right.
Because someone else tomorrow is going to be where you were 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
That's right. That's right.
Right? So
Yeah.
I love this for you, and I see the opportunity in front of you. This episode of Unpacked Culture Chronicles is brought to you by Culture Principles, a coaching and consulting practice helping people build real inclusion from the inside out. Because inclusion isn't just about policies, it's also about our people. And while strong policies matter, it's cultural awareness that brings them to life. Our cultural competency coaching program supports leaders, team members, and change makers alike in showing up with greater clarity, confidence, and care. To learn more, visit us at culture-principles.com/coaching. We'd love to work with you. But now let me kind of shift gears a little bit. I know that we had started off this conversation when we first really sat down to think about this podcast, and we were talking about generations, right? And
Mhm.
how people may view work, the meaning of career, all of these things. What are you seeing with people that are making generational shifts?
Oh man. Well, um, this I hadn't thought about this in our previous, well, because it hadn't happened. I just watched the episode yesterday.
Okay.
My husband and I watch Love is Blind, but we watch it all the different countries. So we're on Brazil, the fifth season. And I bring this up because the latest season is all only the 50-year-olds and over. And so they talk about career, they talk about money. And there was this one individual, and he has four jobs. And there was another individual, and she's very much into theater and theater production. And another guy immigrated from another country in South America. And so he's kind of a nomad, and he's in his 60s and he's doing his own thing. And I just looked at my husband. I was like, this is awesome because I don't necessarily see that here in the States, or maybe I'm not plugged into the communities that do that. But the narrative that I'm aware of isn't that in North America, in the global north, including Europe, um, over 50, let's say like boomers age, I guess. My mom is in her 60s, that you can still make changes. I think it's more
Mm.
so, at least in my family, um, from my parents, it's been more so you develop skills, you stick into a job, you ride out that wave, and then you harvest. You get your retirement, your pension, whatever that looks like. And so it was so cool for me to see in Brazil, in a country in the global south, because I don't like to use third world countries or whatever. I was like, wow, great for them that some people of whatever age, 20s, 30s, 40s, are embracing technology and are embracing this globalness. Because I will say, when I was a couple years back in a different company at Freddie Mac, I worked with some Gen Z individuals, and they were very much for the corporate ladder. Like, what do I need to do? And so I just say that because I'm wondering, as I do my own work in figuring out what's happening in the career world, in work, in business, I feel like it's less so generational demographic, and it's more so if if the individual feels so inclined to like, what's our risk appetite individually, and what do we feel like we're prioritizing, then I feel like regardless of age, we're willing to take those risks. But if the individual isn't as inclined, then it's like, okay, regardless of how old we are, we might just um might choose a lane. So that's something that I'm noticing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess I can see that also because I am thinking about how many colleagues that I have now that have hit maybe they're 50, right? And they've decided they're doing a career change, right? That has so much to do with risk appetite because they were comfortable, like they were not laid off, they were in their jobs, they were making six figures above, and they said at some point, like, I'm gonna pivot. I want to do something different. I've had a full career in this area where I'm retiring from this. But I appreciate sort of the risk appetite. And I would say for so many of us that want to go out on our own, this is not for the weak of heart, right? Like, or the faint of heart is what they would say. It's challenging at times to be an entrepreneur, to change careers, to sort of throw your world as you knew it up into a little bit of a disarray. But it can be so rewarding when you find that path that you absolutely want to be on.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And I will say, going back up to, or like picking back off of that generational stuff. My mom is in her 60s, and I remember in when I was starting, she was very much like, get a government job. In her mind, it was about safety and security. And she always wanted me to work for USAID or whatever sort of, fill in the blank government agency. And I don't know. I have a friend ask me this. She's like, but Raquel, why didn't you never why have you always done your own thing? Like, even when something seemed to be going okay, you could have stayed in X job. You still quit. You still did. And I just, the answer then that I answered her, and then I think it's still true today, is I just never wanted to be a cog in a machine. I always wanted to keep learning. I'm a huge advocate for being self-taught, for learning in school, like whatever it is to learn. Learning is so important. Learning about ourselves is so important. And being self-autonomous, because I feel like outsourcing and just letting the systems that be give me a paycheck and just tell me what to do. And I just there was something so off-putting to me about clocking in, and just even if I had nothing to do, all I had to do was sit there and get paid. And and my husband was like, but what's wrong with that? And I love him, and he has his own things. But I love being creative. I love pushing myself. And not to say that we all have to be this way, but I just had an awareness. And I
Mhm.
think that is the more awareness about ourselves, going back to the needs, is what helps us. Okay, is this the move? Is this not the move right now? And that's not steered me wrong. I mean, I've had some not great jobs, but I've learned from them. And I've kept moving. And so I will just say that I feel like that's been something generationally that my mom, love her, but we just disconnect. Like, she has a
Yeah.
different thing, I've got a different thing.
And as you share that, like what surfaces for me also in having other conversations, including in my family, as someone who might be a first gen to this country, I think there are different ways that our parents might view work and career because they're like, "Oh, in order to be successful in America, this is who you have to be." And it sounds like you heard your mom and you were like, "Oh, I love you, mommy. Thank you so much for that. And I'm going to take this different path."
100%, 100%. Yeah. And I mean, I'm very proud of her. I will say, like, coming to this country, all of my family are immigrants. It's just myself and a handful of cousins that were the first ones born here. So having these role models, and to add more, not salt to injury, but just like to add the pressure on. My mom is the first in our family to go to college. I'm the second. And so there was just like the pressure of like, okay, I went to college, you go to college. I got to go, she worked for the school district in Florida. What is expected of me? And I
Yeah.
just, I didn't like any of that. Like, I didn't even want to go to college in the first place. My heart when I was in high school was all about yoga. And I was just feeling like figuring out how to feel good about my body. Because when I grew up, there was so much body dysmorphia and just discomfort, being petite, being curvy. And so that was the journey I was on. And so by the time college hit, my mom was like, okay, where are you going? And why aren't you applying to these places? Because in her mind, Ivy League, and she comes from an academic, she got a
Yeah.
master's. And I was like, but I'm not on your, not that I'm not on your level, but I don't want to be in that world.
Mhm, mhm.
And not having the skills. I'm also an only child, so not having the skills to speak to my mom in a certain way, and she's the matriarch in the family, and I was like, oh my god. So it is challenging because it on top of the fact that success and money, purpose, prosperity, it feels like a journey we go alone. To have to stand up to, let's say, our role models, the people that mean well for us, but have to navigate that and then continue to do that in spaces like in work. It's just in an evolving journey. It's
Yeah,
not easy, but it gets better. Yeah.
yeah. I hear 2 things in what you just said. Like, one is around being able to define success for ourselves, right? Like,
Hmm.
you can parents are always gonna want something for their kids, right? It doesn't even matter what it is, but, like, your definition of success or like, my mom was she just knew I was gonna be a doctor, and she told me this, like, every night when I was a kid, and I was like, "That's lovely," but I was like, "I don't think that's the path that I'm on," and no disrespect to her, like, she wanted me to have an amazing life, right? And so that's what she said that it was gonna be true for me, and I chose a different path, but I think the other thing is lovingly, like, we can hear what our family is saying to us or other, adults in our lives as young people, but there's also boundaries, like, I can hear you, and this is my path.
Yes, yes, exactly, 100%. Yeah, and I will
Mhm,
say, on the other side, my dad was much more entrepreneurial. Like he also came to this country. They were both immigrants. My dad was undocumented, and my mom came through with legal papers. And I just say that because I feel like it's important to show that regardless of I have friends who are on DACA, and so it's just I don't want to be blasé because I know that legal structures are really hard to navigate, to overcome, and I don't know. I feel like it's important to me to say that I've had two perspectives. Again, I'm not an immigrant, so I don't know how it is to interact with the corporate structure in that way. But it's always top of mind for me because I have friends who have the visa that Trump put the fine on recently. I forget what the 10. And so I
yeah,
say that as we approach work, there's all these other structures, and my dad was very entrepreneurial. And so I got to see both structures. What does it look like to do your own thing on your own terms? And what does it also look like to navigate a system that you didn't create, but you have to find your way around? And I didn't know that I was leaning one way more than the other. But I think with time, and as we give ourselves the opportunity to explore that part of ourselves, I enjoyed being. My dad made a school for other immigrant men to learn HVAC, heating, air conditioning, all these things. And
mhm,
he got to partner in Southern Florida with the school district. And I was like, wow, this is great. I mean, he loved it. It was profitable. It was a win-win, giving back to the community. My mom did a different thing with academia. And um, I started to realize that I liked the entrepreneurial side, and just I never with debt, with all the responsibilities that we talk about as adults, that is on pause, and so we pick and choose. We pick and choose when things,
yeah,
but always having that space of like, okay, um what is it that I need? What is it that I want? And checking back, because maybe, who knows? I say this to a friend. I'm like, she said, "What if your best business would have never worked out?" And I was like, "Then I would have done a new business." Like there was not a world for me where I would have opted into 9 to 5, and I just know myself. But that's where that awareness is, and I'm glad that I got to see in both of my parents that are of the same generation, how they navigated, and I got to kind of, okay, how does this look? Yeah.
yeah. I'm appreciating, like, the multiple perspectives on things, I think in this moment in particular, I think why I like to hear different perspectives is that so many of us are trapped in this loop of believing there is a single story, that there is only one right way to do things, and I keep asking this question of, like, what else might be true? Because there's so many ways that we can arrive, like, success is going to mean 10 different things to 10 different people. Right? And
Yes.
and even if they agree on what success ultimately looks like, I want to work in this particular job, make X amount of dollars, how they get
Mhm.
there looks different,
Yes, exactly,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
And so can we hold space for all of that? Um, I guess I wanna ask you this other question, just given sort of what you shared.
Sure.
A lot of people today are looking for more than just a paycheck, right?
Hmm.
And I am curious, like, from what you've seen, how do you see purpose shaping the way that people pursue work?
Ooh, I love this question because initially when I claimed that I'm a career coach. I and I think I've shared on here, at least in conversation with you, the the struggle I've had with the word career. Um, and so I wanted to call myself a purpose coach. Like I help people find their purpose. And that went back to when I was starting and I was like, what is my purpose? I consider myself a spiritual person. So I was like, okay, maybe universe, God, mystery, whatever we want to call it. There's a reason. Like there's a reason for things. And I choose to believe that. Because if not, I don't want to believe in chaos and just things are random. We all have our choices, and that was my choice. I believe that. Um, but I, but I the word purpose is interesting for me because it's like um intention, which goes back to the need of, okay, how long is this intention for? Um, I'm trying not to be so random because my brain is like, oh, I can think about my running as a metaphor. That I've never been a runner, but lately in this past 2 years, I've gotten into the running habit. And the purpose of running for me is meditation, not so much I want to lose weight, or, I mean, that's fine. But like the purpose of it. And so, I say that because when I work with like some of my friends who are still picking my brain and what do you think about this and what should I do about that, and I'm like, well, what is it that you want from that? What do you see yourself in X way? Fill in the blank. Because I feel like the more intentional, and this is why even in my business I struggled with, do I just work with people who want to start a business, or do I work just with people who are trying to repurpose the corporate ladder? And I don't want to choose because I feel like any of us should be able to go in between and cross the bridge to the other side at any point. It's about the intention. Sometimes we need to hold down the fort and we need that steadiness, for whatever reason, for the finances, for our mental health. It is good sometimes, at least for me, to just check out. I just check this box and do that thing. And I can get insurance and I can do some things. But it's also good to let me explore, let me be passionate and push myself um, and not having to choose. So I feel like um, the intentionality. What is it that people want in this season of their life? And it will change. So just again with that bandage of like, okay, this is temporary, or we can check back if I don't even know the timeline. Let me just do this thing for right now,
Yeah.
check back in 2 months, and then circle back with myself. Yeah.
Yeah, you're touching on something I think that is particularly important right now. I don't know if you like follow social media at all, but there was and a woman named Tabitha Brown, right? She is an influencer, has her own hair care line, some food, etc. And she came on and she has caused quite a controversy in the entrepreneur space because she said to people with all the love, she said, some of you just need to get a W 2. And people lost their minds. But I think what was so important about her
Mm-mm.
statement in this moment, because I happen to agree with her, even as someone who's an entrepreneur myself, right? But coming back to what you just said, it is seasonal.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you do what you need to do to protect your family, to
That's
protect
right.
your peace, your mental health, right? To keep
That's
a
right.
roof above your head. And so
That's right.
you can make a choice today. Like I might want to be an entrepreneur. Great. I'm going to pursue that. And I'm going to do it as long as I can until something changes that says, hey, seasonally, this season is over,
Yeah.
right? It is
Yeah.
time to try something else on. But even if one took that W-2 job, it does not mean you have to do it forever, right?
Yeah.
Like it is a season.
Exactly.
It's a
And
season.
that's the thing, actually. I think that's the biggest at least shift is, and again, maybe other people who are millennials might see things differently because they have chosen a lane. But I feel like not defining ourselves by what we do. Defining ourselves by the job or by the season we're in. Because I think that's the hardest thing. Like from speaking for myself back in the spring, um it was so hard for me to not want to be in business. All I wanted to do was I have all these ideas and I want to be in that, embody myself, be in that body of business. And I couldn't. I mean, I was focused with that goal of finishing those consultancies and making the goal of finishing the loan. And then after that, I was like, okay, then we'll see. Then we'll take the next step. But it's hard to honor the moment because it's like we don't want to be where we are sometimes. I mean, I'm telling you, I was there. I know.
That hits home, right? Like this acknowledgement, I don't want to be where I am, right? I have bigger dreams for myself.
Yeah,
I'm looking
yeah,
forward to tomorrow. And like, I think everybody has walked that path at
yeah,
some point, and you
yeah.
have that, you can say that it's true for you. And yet,
Yes,
in order to be intentional, we have to acknowledge where we are today,
yes,
right?
yes.
Because
And
if
then
I acknowledge that, now I can talk to you about what's next.
exactly, exactly. And even it's not, and this is why I will say, I mean, I'm an open book. I had a different service where last year it was 1 month. And so people would hop on a call. We would have 2 calls a month, and then we would work on their resources. So for those who are in the 9 to 5, we would do their LinkedIn and their resume and all their things. For those who are more entrepreneurial, would do the website, all their things. But the thought process was, let me arm you with your tools and we do the mental things. So you're good to go. Now I just do the 90-minute because I'm like, we don't have a whole month. People want to see more change, and it's not even just see more change. Sometimes we're so lost up here or in here that it's like I don't even know what I need to do to work
Yeah.
on. So first I need to get clear. It's like the windshield wipers. Let me be your windshild wiper for a bit and bring with you to the call the things that in the moment you feel like will steer you, and
Yeah.
then we will walk the next steps.
So tell me a little bit about this because I know you also have a framework. When you tell people that you are a clarity coach, right?
Yes.
What does that actually mean? And what is this
Mhm.
framework that people are coming to you for?
Yes. So I do say I'm a clarity coach for work, your work and career, because I feel like I've seen a lot. Get clear with your life, or like, I'm not a lifestyle coach. I am a career work strategist. And the method I've developed, I call the triple P, P as in Peter or whatever. I mean, I come from an English background, so I like alliteration. And so it's purpose, presence, and prosperity. So, purpose is like what we just said. What is it that you need? What's your intention? So, if people come to me and they say, Raquel, I've just like, I have a friend who was laid off because of USAID, non existent. Okay, so are you looking for another job? If so, do you need a certain amount of income? She's a mom, like she was pregnant. Are you also looking to have time for your family? If so, like what are all the specifications in your life? Are you willing and able to ask for support from your partner, from your family? Do you need to hold the burden all on your own? What does it look like to downsize? What does it look like to have gig works? I mean, there are so many possibilities that people might not be comfortable with, but could meet where they need or like meet their needs. But this is where we start to get intentional. Okay, what is the bare minimum, the non-negotiables? What is the ideal? And then we start to carve out. P for presence, because for those who know that, nope, I want a W-2 or I want a 1099 contract or I want to start entrepreneurship. Okay, let's start working on that presence because LinkedIn with SEOs and website with SEOs and all the things speak about our story. Like we need to claim our story. Who are we now? What is it that we want to show up as? And that way, the last P, prosperity, comes easily because the money will come, the success will come. Like the prosperity is the equal, like P plus P equals P, or whatever we want to say the formula. Because I've experienced this. I don't know, and I really want to say I'm not trying to be blasé, but I don't apply to jobs anymore. I haven't applied to a job, a W-2 job in the past since before COVID. And I attribute my success to this formula that I've gotten very strategic about how I show up on LinkedIn. You will see my business and my contractor. I've been a contractor for 10 years. They're both on LinkedIn. I don't I only update my resume a couple times a year. And it's always like, I know I want to be a contractor because I don't want to be an employee. So I will say consultant, contractor, making this amount of money, only remote, only hybrid. I set my terms. And I receive. Now, I'm not saying that this is foolproof. I can't guarantee that people will receive a job, but I can guarantee the clarity, the intentionality, and the tools. Um, so prosperity works out once we nail these two parts first.
Okay. So I am loving this, right? I am a huge fan of LinkedIn. I've often said, and including some of my guests that have been on the show, I met via networking on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And yet when I tell people the power that this platform has, a lot of people kind of shrink back and they're like, I'm not comfortable with it, or I don't really know how to use it. And so I'm curious, given just what you said, what would you tell someone, particularly for those that are right now in a transition period? What should they be
Hmm.
doing?
Well, we all have transferable skills. I mean, speaking to my friend who was at USAID, even the things that we don't think, like the soft skills or the types of technologies that we use, all of that, I would say, if able, this has been an interesting exercise. I did a background check on myself
Okay.
because I was like, I want to know what recruiters see. I want to know what human resources and all of them because I want to capture any holes in my story and be able to see how can I speak to this if there are any questions. If there's what is that expression? Your best offense is
A
greatest
good
offense
beat.
is defense. Something like that. Yeah, I feel like it's vice versa. It's vice versa. And I don't want people to go out and get a background check. I mean, you can if you have the money, if you have the energy to do that. But it's like look at your narrative of your career, of your story because it's a story and start to see, okay, what are the things that I've taken with me role to role, job to job? What are the things that I should highlight and not just I've increased production by 10%, but like oh, if I hadn't created this framework, or if I hadn't have talked to X stakeholders, blah, 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 blah. So I
Yep.
feel like really looking at our stories and highlighting that on LinkedIn. Of course, AI, I really tell people to use ChatGPT. It's not the end all be all because it's not a human being and it might not catch nuance. But to go through, look, this is what I have right now. What are the things that I don't even see? What if a recruiter or a human resources person? What are the commonalities? And really leveraging the story, the SEO stuff on LinkedIn, the keywords is huge because I've even asked recruiters, why did you pick me? How did you find me? And they
Mm.
would say, because you use certain words. And I was like, okay. So
Okay.
they don't teach this stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like people need to come check you out, because there's I think a lot of power in there. And what I am getting a good sense of right now as I just sort of do my normal networking is that there is a overwhelming sense of frustration by people who aren't able to find jobs right now, who are actively on social media, like on LinkedIn and those types of platforms, but the market is flooded with a lot more people than traditionally, and so they do have to find ways to stand out.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. And I mean, this is another reason why, at least for me, I've applied a handful of times to LinkedIn. The biggest resource, and maybe people are already doing that, was Indeed. That has been actually my go-to because number one, I don't know the algorithm of LinkedIn of when they say 1,000 people have applied for this role. I don't know how true some of those stats are, but that for me has felt off-putting because if I'm already in need of a job and I'm applying, it sure, maybe there's a dopamine hit of, yeah, I did it. But then the other side of that coin is, the systems, the ATS systems, the AI systems that are reading that. Um, are they really going through 1,000 resumes? Maybe yes. How are they? And so this is why I feel like the more that we can be intentional and the more that we can position ourselves, it feels more passive because, oh, all I have to do is update keywords on my LinkedIn. But that already sets you apart because many people may or may not be doing that, or people may only be focusing on the resume. Or, one other thing I do is I have a portfolio, so for those who feel like there's not any kind of non-disclosure agreements or things like that, taking screenshots, showing their work in a visual way, is a huge standout because people don't even think of. I mean, I've not come across other people who aren't in creative fields, that it doesn't seem like, oh, I should have a portfolio. Have a portfolio anyway because you want to show yourself off. And yeah.
Yeah. I'm smiling as you say that because my daughter just had some friends over to the house the other day, and one young lady she was so excited. They're getting ready to graduate from high school, and she said, "I'm going to cosmetology school." And so my daughter had whispered in my ear earlier, she's like, "Oh, she does makeup and she's really good at it." And I was like, "Oh," I was like, well, I said, "Would you like to, like, I have a photo shoot coming up." I was like, "Would you like to do my makeup?" I was like, "I will pay you and all of this." And I said, "You can take pictures and put it in your portfolio." And she said, "Well, I don't have a portfolio." And I was like, "But how often have you been doing this?" And she's like, "Well, I do it all the time. I do it for my friends and family." And I said, "Please document this." Right. And so to that point, even as a young person, so we're talking about someone who is 17, 18 in that age range, but even as adults, everything that we do is a demonstration of our capabilities, of our successes, even of the hard things that we didn't get quite right. It's a lesson learned. Right? Can you pull that up? Or as the young people say, do you have receipts on on your life in that way? And like, what a beautiful testimony that you don't have to think about it when someone's like, what have you done? Well, allow me to show you,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
It's not bragging. It is literally, let me walk you through the history on this. So,
Yes.
Raquel, it has been lovely to sit down and chat with you. If people are interested in getting in touch with you, where can they find you? And please put in a plug for your podcast also.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, all roads lead to Substack for me because I love Substack. I love I live on Instagram and people can find me on YouTube, all the things, but primarily I update Substack twice a week. I come up with frameworks for free. I know it's not free or like, but your energy and yeah, I'll just leave it at that because if not, it's a whole spiel. But I do my best to support people where they're at. So I try to give guidelines like this, that people can apply. If you want my help and specifically my brain in your world, in your work, then I also have on Substack a page about my service, the 90-minute clarity session. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. Everything is Miriam Raquel Sands in all the places. So I'd love to work with anybody and help people and support everyone. So
Wonderful. And we will make sure that we add all of those links to the show notes so that you can find Raquel. Definitely appreciate it being able to sit down. And I hope that people are able to take some of your words of wisdom and really start to apply them as they're out in the job market right now. So thanks so much, Raquel.
thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. It makes a big difference in helping us grow this community. And if you're looking for coaching or resources to take your cultural awareness to the next level, visit us at culture-principles.com/coaching. And remember, where curiosity leads, connection follows. Be well.